Question was brought up. Let's talk about Syria. Okay, so what happened? You got Assad there. You've had a civil war going on there for like 7 years now. You got a lot of different parties on the ground in there. Now, when this happened about, 4 or 5 years ago when President Obama was in office, the gassing of, was it Aleppo?
Could have been.
One of those cities in Syria was gassed. The civilians were gassed. And President Obama had talked about a red line. You're crossing a red line if you use chemical weapons, right? What did President Obama end up doing about it? Nothing.
You said the other day.
Because we didn't know definitively who had used those weapons. It could have been al-Nusra, which is a offshoot of Al-Qaeda. Not ISIS, because ISIS and Al-Qaeda don't get along. Okay, it's al-Nusra, which is part of ISIS. They did.
Wait, you said that backwards.
Yeah,
Al-Nusra is part of
Al-Qaeda, not ISIS.
Correct.
There we go.
Sorry. Anyhow, that being said, the Obama administration worked out a deal with the Russians to say that they would make sure that instead of us bombing, they would get rid of the chemical weapons in Syria and make sure that they all got turned over. So fast forward to last week when chemical weapons were used again. Do we know actually who used those? Was it the Assad regime, which is the government, or was it somebody else? And there is still doubt as to who did it. But I think feeling pressure from France and Britain, President Trump went ahead and all three of them had carried out strikes. Was it Friday?
Yeah.
Friday.
Israel also participated.
No. Israel's trying to stay out of it. We don't want to drag Israel into this. Okay? In fact, if you go back to the Iraq War. When we went into Iraq, Saddam started lofting missiles at Israel to try and bring them in. And Israel kept their cool. Even though they were under attack, they did not respond because they knew it would cause a lot of problems if they got involved. Yeah.
So, I read that Russia and Syria, instead of blaming it on al-Nusra, claimed that the whole thing was a fabrication, like it was just made up.
Right. And they also claimed Russia that they shot down like half of the missiles.
Yeah.
Which there's no evidence of. Guys, I don't know. I mean, personally, I don't support the attack. I get it. I don't know if it's the right thing to do. I just don't want us to change our policy on Assad. Because I've talked to you guys about this before, where you had Obama in there and said Assad's got to go. Well, now you have a new president that's... Because what happened when we got rid of Saddam? What happened when we got rid of Gaddafi? What happened when we got rid of Mubarak? What happened? We got worse than what we had. So if we can't learn from recent history, like in the last 10 years, we're in trouble. I know Assad sucks. Okay? There's no question. But what you're going to get instead could be much worse. Yeah.
So how are you ever going to get rid of a dictator like that if you just think that
People got
there's gonna be that's the thing, is that are people going to be able to ever overthrow a dictatorship? Because if
At this point, it's been 7 years, and no.
Because if we think that way, which I'm not saying we should, because I don't really know what I'm talking about, but if we think that way, that there's going to be ISIS 3.0 pops up if we do that, we're never going to be able to fix any of those problems.
Right. And is Syria a problem we have to fix? It was Iraq a problem we had to fix. Maybe the first time when he invaded Kuwait. But the second time, in retrospect, no.
They have weapons of mass destruction, Mr.
Right.
So do we.
Which, as far as I'm concerned today, is only a threat is if it's nuclear and it can be put on a missile and launched at Europe or the United States. And even then, I don't know. So hopefully, I mean, Trump. I don't know if Trump really wanted to do this. I think he got a lot of pressure from Britain and France to act on this. Okay.
What happened to the art of the deal? I just think he doesn't want to look weak.
Well, I agree with you, Jack. He doesn't want to look weak.
He needs the back up at the top.
Yeah.
He likes pride.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know what we hit. I mean, we're claiming it could be factories that could be used to make chemical weapons. I don't think Syria has chemical weapon manufacturing going on right now, personally.
It's possible.
It is possible. I don't know what we took out. I don't know if we killed any civilians. I don't know.
No one knows anything. We just know we shot missiles at something.
A lot of missiles. A lot of tomahawks. Okay?
No, it's all fake. We didn't shoot any missiles, actually.
Okay. They're blanks.
Yep.
Just to make us appear.
Filled with confetti.
Filled with care package.
Russia has said if we do it again, all hell could break loose. But what are they going to do? They're going to shoot at one of our ships? Russia? They don't want to do that. We don't want them to do that. They don't want to do that. Okay? But listen, Russia's military is not near as strong as our military. Now, they have tanks, and if they want to invade Ukraine or Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, they probably could, and we'd have a hard time stopping them. But that would bring about a full-scale war with NATO.
They don't want that either.
I don't think they want that.
They realize it's unsustainable. They get bogged down by the time they reach the shore.
Yeah.
It'd just be a deadlock.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, sometimes tough talk. I hope we didn't kill anybody we weren't supposed to.
I'm sure we did.
Yeah.
Well, there's always
Yeah, I'm not turning into a dove here, people. Okay. All right. Generally, I am, but I think we gotta learn from this, guys. We gotta learn. All right. So we did eminent domain, correct?
yeah.
Okay. So moving on, guys. This is gonna be on the test. We're gonna start looking at. Unique powers of each house. Okay, the two houses we've been talking about are the House and the Senate. Okay, and so on the test in the matching section, there's going to be House and Senate. You're going to use them more than once. You're going to tell me which house has this power. So let's start with the basics. Only this house may introduce bills that raise government revenue. The House of Representatives. Anytime they're going to tax you or spend your money, it has to start in the House. And that goes back, guys, to the colonial governments. Yeah, we do talk about the legislative branch having the purse, but more specifically, the House really controls the purse. Yes? So everybody got that? Okay. Oh, by the way, I am almost done with your test. I have 3 or 4 more, and then I've got one left to take. So I will have those done by tomorrow. They'll be in the book today. Okay. Some of them are already in the book. Most of them are in the book already.
They'll be online?
Yeah. That's the only book I have. Very trusting of technology here. All right, only this House elects the president if there's no majority in the Electoral College.
House Senate.
Jack, you're off today.
Yeah. Is it the House?
It's the House.
Yeah.
Alex president in a tie.
That's a tie, right? 538. Or you could go a third party. Like that.
What?
Okay? That's 3 candidates. Nobody gets the magic number.
Nobody can win.
Okay.
Nobody gets the magic number. So the House is going to select the president. Okay? Or elect the president. Now, we've talked about this before, see if you remember. Each state gets one vote. So how many representatives are there from Kansas in the House? 4. And they're all what? They're all Republicans. Now you go to Florida, how many House members do they have?
27.
27. Subtract 2 from every number up there. That's how many House members they have. Okay? Now, you got to have 26 states to elect the president. This has happened twice. In 1800 and 1824. Thomas Jefferson was elected by the House, and John Quincy Adams was elected by the House. Jack, ask the question.
And how do they decide where DC's votes go? Because they don't have representatives.
They are not a state.
But they have free electoral.
They don't get to play.
Oh, they just not, they don't factor.
They don't get to play.
No, they were.
So I thought you were going to ask this question, Jack.
Yeah, 25.
What if it's a tie?
The leader of the House.
No.
He goes to the Senate.
Yeah, you're going to have some revotes. You got to get to a majority. So, the outgoing vice president becomes president until they break the deadlock. Now, what if that outgoing vice president is running for president? Say it's 2024 and Pence is running for president.
You better not mess
It goes to the House and it's a tie. Pence becomes vice president. Now, what if they break it and the other candidate, we'll go with Kamala Harris, the Democrat. She wins 26-24. Pence would have to leave. But we would count him as one of our presidents.
That's cool.
Okay? Now, the Constitution also has a provision for the vice president. So if it's a tie, who gets to choose the vice president? Not the House, but the Senate. But that point is moot. Because of what amendment?
I don't know. 15, 14, 16.
Say it. The 12th. Remember the 12th Amendment, Christo?
Not specifically.
It's where they put the vice president and the president on the same ballot. You elect them together.
Yeah.
So that the Senate role here would be null and void. Does that make sense?
Why did they start putting that?
What?
Why did they start putting them on the same ballot?
Because you would have a
Because the guy that finished first was president, the guy that finished second was vice president. So Hillary being Trump's vice president.
It was just, yeah,
That would be
insane.
fun.
That'd be
Yeah, you got to worry about a lot more about assassination plots now. Okay. Only this body can approve treaties by a 2/3 majority. Only the Senate can approve treaties. And it has to be by a 2/3 majority. Smitty, are you writing this down or just you're going to remember?
It's all been
Hey, you're one of those guys.
It's all been
I like it. Hey, by the way, on grading the test, you guys did a pretty good job. So far, so good.
What about me?
I didn't say everybody.
Yeah, Tristan.
Overall. Okay.
No, Tristan is everybody.
All right. So you got that? Now, a treaty, guys. That's a high threshold. 2/3 majority. A treaty is an agreement between the United States and one or more countries. So remember, the best example of this is always the League of Nations after World War I. President Wilson's idea is 14 points, and then the Senate says, no, we're not joining. Okay? It's like 82-13. Okay?
For the Senate, they actually made a good decision.
Now, let's talk about the Iran deal that President Obama made with Iran. There's no way in hell that that the Senate would have approved that as a treaty. So it's not a treaty. And we'll talk about this when we get to the executive branch. It's called an executive agreement. That agreement is only binding as long as President Obama and the Ayatollah, whatever his frickin' name is, Khomeini, okay, are in power. Now, President Trump could do away with that agreement today if he wanted to. It is only binding because President Trump hasn't said we're not going to stay with that agreement. It's not a treaty.
Why has it?
Yeah, he said he was going to tear it up.
So why has it?
Well, because his advisors are saying don't.
It's been enough time. Why not?
We'll see what happens. All right, I'm watching season 6 of Homeland. Have any of you guys ever watched Homeland?
That's a show about the Russians.
No, it's
Well,
about
that's Motherland.
it's about the East. It's about the Middle East. Okay, and it goes way back to Afghanistan. Now they're back in New York, and this is one of the topics is the Iran deals. So, anyhow, only this body can approve presidential nominations.
The people.
Presidential nominations, like to the Supreme Court,
Senate.
to the ambassadorships. Only the Senate.
Oh, okay, that's what.
Yeah, presidential appointments, right? So you've got ambassadors, you got consuls.
What's the difference between an ambassador and a consul?
A consul runs the consulate.
Okay.
The consulate is different than the embassy, which ambassadors run, right? Consulates deal with travel, visas, citizenship, that sort of thing. So I know this because of Lily. Because when we went to China, we didn't go to Beijing to the embassy. We went to Guangzhou, where the consulate is. And there, at the consulate, that's where she was sworn in as a U.S. citizen. And so the president gets to choose the ambassador, consul's cabinet, right? And judges, federal judges.
Do the presidents usually keep the same ambassadors and consulates?
No, they will switch them. Now, maybe some important ones that are really they like, have a relationship with, they might keep. Generally, like these ambassadorships, like the ambassador to Luxembourg or the ambassador to Albania, tend not to be really important. So those are jobs you give to like big campaign contributors, good friends of yours. Hey, would you like to go be the ambassador to Greece for 4 years and be treated like a king? Sure, I'll take that job. Take your family, move to Greece, stay in the embassy. It's pretty nice. Athens. Now, is the ambassador to China important?
Yeah.
The ambassador to Russia important? Yeah. Okay. Some of these, they're not really that important. I mean, they are kind of, but so this is a majority vote. Yeah.
Do we have embassies in all countries?
Every country
Everyone?
Really?
that we have relationships with. We do not. We do not have one in North Korea.
What about Russia?
We do not have one in Iran because the Iranians stormed it
What, like,
and
no-
took our people hostage.
Okay, so we do not have embassies in every country.
What?
Every country that we have relations with.
Correct.
So, okay, so
Correct.
we don't have
Oh,
like
every
Right, I
country.
didn't finish my statement.
the
Yeah.
relations.
He just wanted to answer
Okay,
his
so-
statement instead of re-answering.
Right, we do not have
Then
ambassadors.
it's like okay. I mean, what countries don't we have relationships with?
North Korea, Iran.
That's one.
Right now, I don't know if we have an ambassador in Venezuela at this point.
Okay.
We might.
Is there one in
Russia
small
can't
African
have an
country?
I guess,
Yeah,
I
what
guess
about
what
all
I'm
the
talking about
tiny
is,
ones?
you know, like
Ghana
in
and
Africa.
Ivory Coast, yes.
There's one in
And-
Burkina Faso, in Togo, in Benin, in
Yeah.
Liberia, in
Yeah,
all of them.
yeah. And those countries have embassies in Washington, D.C. Yeah. So when you go to Washington, D.C., on Fifth Avenue, Fifth Avenue is very well, or, yeah. Is it Fifth Avenue? No. So, yeah. That's New York, Fifth Avenue. We did a tour bus, and these embassies are, they have their flags out front. Okay.
How big are they?
It's kind of weird. Maybe I might need to look that up because some of those embassies might be in New York. Maybe not in the capital, D.C. I know the Russian embassy's in D.C.
The Canadian.
Huh? The Canadian one is?
Yeah.
You know? How do you know? You been there or something?
When we went to the martial arts.
They were supporting.
They were what?
Yeah, there's people standing outside the Canadian one when they were and said
They supported us or
Yeah.
not?
They did.
They did? Well, that was nice of them.
Well, maybe the Canadians were just being Canadians.
That could be true.
Just being nice. Hey.
No, it's for all the Canadians that support abortion.
They said
Actually
they
support the-
Yeah, I was thinking this is a pretty liberal country. All right. Now here, courtesy. How do you spell courtesy? Courtesy.
Yeah, you got it.
Is that right?
Yeah, you got it.
Senatorial courtesy. Okay. Hey, listen. With most cabinet picks, like if President Trump wants Mike Pompeo to be the Secretary of State, most of the time the Senate does senatorial courtesy where the president should be able to choose his cabinet, his own advisors. And so they usually just kind of rubber stamp that, yay. But you get into situations like Betsy DeVos, who was nominated as Secretary of Education. She didn't really come from the education establishment, and so there was a lot of resistance to her because of her ideas on school choice and charter schools and that sort of thing from the education establishment, and that means the Democrats. And so there was resistance. In fact, Mike Pence had to cast the deciding vote on her nomination. Okay, but that's in the Senate. Okay, it's just a majority vote here. Now, where it does get very contentious is here with judges and the Attorney General, which enforces federal law. It can become very contentious because these federal judges and Supreme Court justices serve for life, and they affect culture. They change culture with their decisions. So it's a big deal. Okay, these nominations, but that is done in the Senate. Okay, good. Okay. Now, next thing we're going to talk about are non-legislative powers. Of Congress. Okay, so these are not laws. So like the presidential appointment is a non-legislative, approving those is not legislative. Because when we speak of legislative, we're talking more about laws. Okay. So let me give you a couple examples. All 27 amendments have been proposed by Congress. So proposing an amendment to the Constitution, an amendment to the Constitution is not a law, is it? No, it's a change to the Constitution. So it's a non-legislative power. Okay, so all 27 amendments. Okay. The second non-legislative power that we're going to talk about, we'll talk about for a while, is impeachment. There's three types of people that can be impeached. The president, the vice president, federal judges. So the process here, what impeachment actually means, okay? Oops. You've got two parts here. One, impeachment means to formally accuse. If you are impeached, it doesn't mean you're guilty. It just means you're being formally accused of a political crime, which could be a real crime. But this is a political process. It's not a criminal process, impeachment. If you are impeached and convicted by the Senate, you're not going to jail. You're just leaving office. Okay? This is not a criminal proceeding, even though crimes may have been committed. So the House does part one. It accuses one of those officials of violating the law, the Constitution, and so forth. So we've had two presidents impeached. Andrew Johnson, who was Lincoln's vice president, and William Jefferson Clinton, okay, in the 1990s. Neither one of them were convicted, okay, in part two, which is the trial. The trial is conducted in the Senate. There's 100 jurors. Who are the jury? The senators. So in any trial, you need a judge, a jury, you need a prosecution.
I was going to say you need an executioner.
The defendant is the president, the vice president, or this federal judge. So depending on who the defendant is, will determine on who the judge is. If the president is on trial, or the vice president is on trial, it will be the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Will be the judge. If a federal judge is on trial, it'll be the vice president. Following me? Now, who's the prosecutor of the president in the case of William Jefferson Clinton? The prosecutor were what were called house managers. These are members of the House that have brought these charges against the president. In the case of William Jefferson Clinton, the House voted on 4 charges. 2 of them passed, a majority. So to accuse the president in the House is just a majority vote. And of course, back in 1996, 97, the Republicans controlled both houses. Okay? President Clinton was accused on 2 fronts. 1, obstructing justice. The claim was that Bill Clinton had people that worked for him, that worked for us, that we pay their salaries, go out and lie to the American people for him. Obstruction of justice. Sending out government officials to lie for you. Which he did. And 2, perjury in front of a federal judge, which is a felony. Not here it's a felony, but in reality it's a felony.
What?
Lying in front of a federal judge under oath is a felony.
Yeah. Okay.
What was
In
your other statement?
reality, like as if it is in reality.
In the criminal world, it's a felony. In the political world, it's
not.
a crime.
So it's just like
But-
he could do it, and it's like it wouldn't matter. He wouldn't be
Yeah, they can't punish him.
criminally convicted for
The
perjury.
Senate cannot punish him other than expelling him as president.
Who gets to punish him then?
Then there'll be a trial outside of this, a
Was
criminal
there,
trial.
Was there a trial? Criminal trial?
No.
Why'd they drop
No,
it?
only on President Trump, okay? Not on Hillary or Bill, but on Trump, okay? They got a special prosecutor in there, okay? That will bring criminal charges that he already has against Flynn and Manafort, okay? Which had nothing to do with collusion, by the way.
Wait, does the president have to go through a Senate trial before a criminal trial?
This is only for impeachment. Right now, he has not been impeached. Now, what Democrats are threatening, and some Republicans, is that if he fires the special counsel, Robert Mueller, or this Rosenstein guy, who is the assistant attorney general, that they'll start impeachment proceedings.
I mean,
But why?
like,
What are they accusing him of?
Well, they want them to be able to finish their fishing expedition.
But they're never gonna finish.
Right.
Well, we're year plus now.
well, I mean, like, if they find evidence of wrongdoing, wouldn't they like people to prosecute?
Well, like the whole thing with his lawyer. Okay, so did the lawyer break campaign finance law by paying off Stormy Daniels?
Do we?
Probably.
Oh,
But what does that have to do with Russia?
look, it's like that's the point. It's a special investigation. They investigate whatever they
Yeah,
want.
there should be a limited scope.
Below those tax
But there's not.
There isn't.
I know. And who's paying for it?
We are.
We are.
We are.
All right, so the House managers build a case against Bill Clinton, okay? The Chief Justice is there, sitting as judge, and you have 100 jurors. It takes 2/3 or 67 of 100 to convict. And of course, back in 1997, 98, the Senate did not convict Bill Clinton. Okay? So he remained in office. So if you were impeached, it doesn't mean you're removed from office. So, likewise with the previous topic where we have unique powers, which house does impeachment take place in? The House. Where does the impeachment trial take place? In the Senate. You got it? All right. Last thing. Oops, we're still under non-legislative powers, okay?
That was all non-legislative?
Yep. Well, impeachment got kind of long-winded, didn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. The last is basically what we call congressional oversight. This is kind of a very important role of Congress that doesn't deal with making laws. The NSA, the National Security Agency, is watching us, right?
Through the swivel.
Through the
Through the
swivel.
swivel.
They're in.
Through the swivel and the camera on my phone.
They know.
Hi, NSA. And they're probably tracking my videos on YouTube.
Hello, Mr. Ebright.
That's where the views are coming from.
Looking for, yes, looking for certain words. Now, who's watching the NSA?
ISIS.
No.
Nobody.
Nobody especially.
Congressional oversight.
Committee on Oversight.
There are committees in Congress that have specific oversight duties over different parts of the executive branch. So who's watching over the Department of Agriculture? The Agriculture Committee in Congress.
Who's watching?
Mark Zuckerberg was on Capitol Hill last week. Everybody knows who Mark Zuckerberg is? Chantel, you know who he is?
A robot.
Zuckerberg.
You mean
He's the founder of what? Facebook. Why was he testifying in front of Congress yesterday? Hey. And what committee was asking him questions? So this is what happens. Guys, you've all heard of the IRS? The Internal Revenue Service. Have any of you ever had a family member that's been audited by the IRS?
Probably.
Okay.
Dead.
I was audited by the Florida IRS.
They found
Okay.
billions of laundered money.
And that audit basically means, guys, if the government picks your name out of a hat and they want to find out whether you paid your taxes in full or not, Some people get their names drawn out of a hat, like President Trump. Okay, he gets his businesses have been audited many times. Okay, so what happens is they send you a letter, the IRS. They're not going to call you. They will send you a letter. Okay, you have been chosen to have your taxes audited. So they're going to send an IRS agent to your house, and they're going to expect you to let that agent in your house, and you're going to have to give that agent your records, your checkbooks, your receipts. And they're going to go through your books and make sure you've paid all your taxes. They're also going to take a look around. They see like 4 jet skis in the backyard and this beautiful jukebox that had to cost a lot of money, and all these toys that you have, but you only make $40,000 a year. How do you have all these toys and you only make $40,000 a year? Are you getting cash on the side? Are you getting paid in cash and not claiming it as income? What's going on here? So here's the thing, guys. The IRS can treat people pretty poorly. In fact, Congress people were getting a lot of complaints that the IRS was treating you as guilty and you had to prove yourself innocent. And Congress hauled the IRS in front of them and started grilling the IRS commissioner, saying, "What is going on here? Why are you treating people like this?" And so the IRS had to change the way it dealt with people when they did audits. Okay, you're innocent until proven guilty in this country. All right, and so that is a big role of Congress, is to oversee what the executive branch is doing so that they're not abusing their powers. Does that make sense? So somebody's got to watch the NSA. Somebody's got to watch the CIA. Somebody's got to watch the FBI. Are they doing their job? Now, all of these entities have what's called a Solicitor General. Is that right? Solicitor?
Sounds right.
I believe it is. So the Solicitor General just came out with a report with the FBI. Okay, this is an internal look at the FBI. This guy, Andrew McCabe, who was working for Robert Mueller in the investigation of Trump, was fired by the FBI director about 3 weeks ago. His name's McCabe. And it's the Inspector General, the Inspector General of the FBI. So it's like, if you've ever watched cop shows, Internal Affairs, they make sure that the cops aren't being bad, Internal Affairs. This is what the Inspector General does, okay, inside these agencies. And he came out with a scathing report about this guy, Andrew McCabe, and he should have been fired. And he shouldn't have been working on this case. Okay? So he got fired one day before his pension was to get kicked in. Okay? This guy was doing some bad stuff. Okay, he's investigating Trump while his wife is running for the Virginia Senate. And the Hillary gave $700,000 to his wife to run for political office, and he's investigating her opponent. He should have recused himself from the case. But he didn't. Now he doesn't have a job.
Good thing he got fired before that pension kicked.
That's right. Okay? That's slime. That is slime. And there's no room for it in the FBI. If we can't trust the FBI, guys, we got a problem. James Comey, the former head of the FBI, just came out with a book because he got fired by Trump. Okay? This guy might have committed some crimes. He was leaking classified information. So the FBI can't be politicized. The CIA can't be politicized. But it is. And that's not a good situation. And President Trump is facing the wrath of that. The deep state that doesn't like him. The swamp. Okay? And we'll see what happens. They may get him. They may get him on something. I don't know. We'll see. So, sometimes Congress does oversight of things they probably shouldn't get involved in. you guys remember the steroid scandal in baseball? Okay, Mark McGwire, Barry Bonds, these guys. Congress got involved with that and started calling these Major League Baseball players to testify.
Why? What?
I don't know. It's not really their business.
They were bored.
Was it a slow day? Like, they want autographs or something?
These types of investigations are going on all the time. Okay? Now, more generally it happens when the party in power is opposite of the party in power in White House and the Congress. So while Obama was president, Republicans controlled Congress for 6 of his last 8 years. Or the last 6 of his 8 years. And so they had all kinds of investigations into Obama. Democrats did that with Bush. Okay? I don't know if you've ever heard of Fast and Furious.
Movie? Yeah.
No. It was a gun running operation the government was doing in Mexico. We were running, the U.S. government was running assault weapons into Mexico and tracking where they wound up. Like with the cartels and stuff. Okay? One of those weapons was used to kill a U.S. Border Patrol agent. Okay? And Congress wanted answers. How did this gun get into the hands of these people that killed the Border Patrol agent? Because the guns originated with the U.S. government. And we were running them. Did anybody go to jail for that?
Probably not.
No. You know why? Because the Attorney General, Eric Holder, was the one that was doing it.
For shame. Guns don't kill. Except for the
All right. So the next thing we're going to do the next 2 days, because we're done,
We're done.
is how a bill becomes a law. Test Friday.
Let's look for alien.
This Friday.
I think we need to look at alien footage, RN.
Yes.
So,
Ancient
yes, at the
aliens.
end. Now listen. This is all in your book. And I'm going to go over it with you in your book. Okay, how a bill becomes a law. Now, on the test, I'm going to have 2 sections. One section is going to be 1 point each on how a bill becomes a law, and then there's going to be another section where 2 points each on how a bill becomes a law. I could have you write a long essay telling me exactly how a bill becomes a law, or I could give you a bunch of short answer questions. I'm going to give you the short answer questions. Okay? And some of you still need to learn how to write short answers to short answer questions. You.
Ooh,
I
shots
have one
fired.
short answer.
Okay? You do not have to rewrite the question in a short answer question.
Sure you do. It's a complete sentence.
Okay, no complete
Like,
sentences.
subscribe.
Like, subscribe, comment.
You
Especially with short answers.